Hello there.
Hello there, you back.
I suppose he told you all about me.
No. Who are you?
Who am I? Who is he?
When I was 4 years old, I asked my mum if I were to die that night, would I go to heaven? And she said, no, you have to become a Christian, otherwise you'll go to hell. So, when I heard that, I believed her immediately. I didn't question whether or not it was true and whether or not there were other options available. I just accepted what she told me and asked how do I become a Christian, because I didn't want to go to hell for, not believing in God or not being a Christian or for any reason. So she just said, well, there's this prayer you have to say, and you can't just say it, you have to mean it. So I asked her what that was, and she went through with me. I've got a rough idea of what she said because we both of us can't really remember, but yeah, she said you say this prayer and that's how you become a Christian. So it was like, dear God, I'm truly sorry for all the naughty things I've done, and I'm asking you to forgive me. I turn to you, Lord Jesus, and ask you to come into my life. I believe in you, and I believe that you died on the cross for me. I want to know you as my friend. I ask in your holy name. Amen. And then that's how I became a Christian. And at the same time, my brother was with me and he was listening, and he also said the same prayer on the same day, and he was 9 years old and I was 4, so that was, I'm 32 now, so that was about 28 years ago, if I'm good enough at maths. But yeah, it wasn't like straight after that it was sort of fine, nothing really changed in my life too much, and I kept watching Thomas the Tank Engine and playing with trains and things, and eventually started playing computer games and things like that. But it was like as I got older and went to school, I started to realise that people not everyone went to church. I went to a Church of England primary school, and so just at that time I sort of assumed that everyone did go to church and everyone did believe in God, and that was sort of normal for everyone. Growing up, but then once I got to high school I started to realise that not everyone believes in God. In fact, most people don't believe in God, and it's like, you know, how do you deal with that sort of thing growing up, and like you're sort of the odd one out, the weird one that for some reason believes in this old-fashioned religion. So that was sort of tough. And I spoke about my faith a little bit at school, but not much. Like once I realised that people didn't want to hear about it, I sort of shut up a bit and started trying to fit in. But it's like the more I tried to fit in, the more I sort of stood out in a way, because I was like, there were two kids that particularly didn't like me. Well, one in particular, but he sort of led the rest of the group, and it's like they all came up with like pretty much anything that they could throw at me to make me think that I had no friends or whatever. And it wasn't because I was a Christian, because it was just, you know, they thought I was different anyway. So like, because I didn't really know like how to fit in. I was a fairly weird kid anyway, but it's like, you know, it's not it's difficult to talk about, but it's like I didn't see myself as weird. I thought I was funny, I thought I was outgoing, I thought I was, you know, being nice to people, and they just said that I was weird. And you know, I turned up late for the first day of school because the previous day I'd been out skateboarding for the first time and I fractured my arm, so I came to school late on the first day, so they laughed at me for that. Like lots of different things. Anytime I tried to make friends or make them laugh, it was just, they were always there reminding me that I didn't have any friends. So it's just like, well, fair enough. So I sort of went through life sort of questioning whether or not God did actually exist and whether or not Christianity was worth anything. And it wasn't until I was about 16 that I went to college, and I didn't do too well in my GCSEs, and had like, was just sort of going through what was available there, and I went and did when I was 15, I did like a taster course at the college, and then what was available was like motor vehicles. So I had an interest in cars due to like Gran Turismo, but I wasn't like really interested in mechanics. I was just sort of, well, this seems like a cool thing to try out, I'll do that. And then since that was the only thing I tried out, I thought, well, the only course I could think of doing was the motor vehicle course, and I sort of found it interesting, but at the same time, it's just like I didn't know anything about cars. I didn't know anything about mechanics. I just sort of liked them because of the games I'd played, and like I was criticised for not even knowing like the basic mechanics. I was like technically minded. I always liked all of the technical side of it and how they all worked, but in terms of actually being able to do the mechanical work, I was just not fast enough. I wasn't strong enough to use the tools to manually turn all the nuts and things, and to do a job that could take someone an hour, it took me the whole day basically. And so I just wasn't very good. I was just thinking like, what am I doing with my life? What's the point really? And it wasn't until I was about 16, 17 that I went to this youth camp, and like on the way there I was just sort of praying and thinking, like, I just don't know where I am. I just don't understand what's the point of me going to church, what's the point of me even being part of this youth group, and what's the point of me even going to the camp? I don't believe it anymore. I just don't, and I was just like praying, if God, if you really do exist, like, just show up, like, show me that you exist. And it was like that camp that weekend, there was the preacher there was like gave us like a summary of like the Bible, and he said to hold your Bibles out if you've got them, and then so hold on. Yeah, he did like a demonstration. He said, open like the last part of Genesis. And then go to the first part of Revelation. Where is it? Yeah, basically you take the last part of Genesis, the first part of Revelation, you turn your Bible upside down, and then that's us. That's our part of life in the middle. And then either side we've got the beginning of the world and the end of the world, which was like a cool little demonstration, or at least I thought it was. So then he was saying, like, basically we're in the middle of what is the beginning and the end, and there's many things that repeat themselves in the end that are in the beginning. And if you look at the tree of life, the tree, the rivers of the Garden of Eden, it's like we've been taken out of the Garden of Eden, but there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, and that's going to be where we go. And all the the same trees, the tree of life and the rivers are all going to be there, and there's different things that are reflected in Revelation that are in Genesis and things like that. So I thought, well, that was interesting. And then just trying to think, because it was like a whole weekend of basically, I mean, there was like games and things, and it was basically like a youth event thing, but it was like I'm gonna have to cut some of this out. I can't think at all now. That's great. Yeah, but it was like a weekend where they would, talk for do a sermon, and then you'd have like games and food in between, and then you'd come back and hear another sermon, and that was basically the whole weekend. And it would go through, and it was supposed to be like this encouragement to young Christians, and to like bring people to faith as well, new people who were part of the youth group. And it was also like a chance to meet different youth groups as well, different churches, because it was like about 4 or 5 different churches that came together on this one weekend. And one of the things that the preacher was talking about was like the resurrection of Lazarus and the resurrection of Jesus, and saying that when Jesus came back from the dead, you could touch him, you could he wasn't just a ghost and he was like, oh, I'm Jesus, whoa. Like, he didn't come back like that, because that's, you know, that's how he preached it himself. He was a physical person, and I was sat on the front row, just sort of folding my arms, like, I was listening, but like just sat there, like, not really doing anything. And when he was saying, you could touch him, he was a real person, he came up to me and, touched me, and I was just like, like, it was because the thing I noticed about him was that I felt like God was speaking to me directly, and even though I was just like sat there, arms folded, wasn't really, looking like I was that impressed, probably. It was just sort of, as he was explaining everything, he seemed like he was talking to me, even though there's other people in the room. It was like he was directing this just at me, because he was answering every question that I had in my mind at the time. And he came right up to me and just touched me. And I was just like, okay, this guy knows. This guy knows that what I'm thinking, and he's like, like he's acting as though I'm the only person there because he touched me, and he could have gone up to anyone else. So, I mean, I don't think he did know, but it's just like, that was a crazy experience. So it was just like, okay, well, I know that Christianity is real. For as far as I'm concerned, it's not. It's not just something that's made up, but I wasn't fully aware of it, I suppose, at the time. But it's just like, as time's gone on, and sort of like looking back at my past of sort of, although, because when I became a Christian when I was 4, it's sort of too young an age really to really understand anything like that, and you just sort of think, well, you're 4, of course you're going to believe that God is real if someone tells you, if your mum tells you that God is real, if your mum tells you that you're going to go to hell if you don't become a Christian, if your mum tells you that to become a Christian you have to say this prayer, and that way you get into heaven, you're going to believe all that when you're 4 years old, because that's 4-year-olds believe everything, don't they? So it's just like, so I'd already gone through the process of like thinking, well, of course I believed that when I was that young, because I was naive or whatever. I was just like why would I believe it now? And it's like, but then God gave me a reason to believe, after I'd been wrestling with this idea that God didn't exist, and then go to church the next week and they did exist, and I'd go to school and then they didn't exist, and I'd go back to church and they did exist, and it was just this constant back and forth. And then it was like, I went to this event, as I was saying, it was like God, and I asked God to speak to me, and there he was, like, speaking to me through this creature. So that's that. And then I got baptized just before I turned 20, which is like, you go and confess, not confess. You basically do what I'm doing now. You go in front of everyone. You tell your testimony, what you've been through, and then you have like a profession of faith. I think that's the correct word, isn't it? You basically tell everyone you're a Christian and how you became a Christian, and that you believe that God is 3 in 1, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You believe that God came down to earth as Jesus died on the cross, rose again on the third day, and then you stood in a pool of water, and then you declare in front of everyone that you believe, and then you baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and you go underwater, and then you come back up. That's a really poor description, I think, but it's all I've got. So I was baptized when I was 19, just about to turn 20, and again, things didn't really change too much. I did have it on video, but unfortunately that was lost. So it's due to someone deciding that they weren't going to buy a cable because they couldn't find them in the shops when you could probably buy a cable on eBay. And that's, another story. But, you forgive people for what they've done, I guess, because I wanted a copy of that video, but, it never got saved because whoever had the camera decided that they didn't want to bother looking for another cable, so I ended up losing that. I'll probably do it again at some point. You can get baptized as many times as you want. So that's that. I'm going to pause for a bit while I think of the next part. Yeah, after I got baptized, it probably should have changed me a bit more than it did. And I think at the time I was we had these students from Moody Bible Institute who had come over to the church to do an internship, and one of them had to either perform a wedding or a baptism, or I can't remember what the other thing was that I needed to do. Might have been a funeral, I don't know. But obviously nobody was getting married, nobody was dying or whatever. I don't know if that was the other thing he needed to do, but one of the things he said was, in order for me to pass my internship, I need to do one of these 3 things. And so it was just I haven't been baptized yet, so you could do baptism. And so I sort of volunteered myself as kill 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing. And I was still quite naive and probably thought, this will please God, and this will also please everyone around me in church, and this is how, because I was sort of still struggling with being accepted and knowing who I was and where I fit in the world, and it's I thought, this will prove that I'm a real Christian, and this will be something that I can do to fit in with the church as well. So, and that's, obviously God wants me to fit in the church. Why wouldn't he want me to fit in with the church? But no, that wasn't the case. So, and obviously I've moved since then. So, that's, and it's nothing, nothing against the church that I was in. It's just I had to move on. I had to, I couldn't stay where I was for the rest of my life. I had to keep going, and I just didn't see it at the time. So yeah, we just did the baptism, and it was good. I changed it a little bit, but I didn't fully understand what it meant. So I'll probably get baptized again at some point in the future, just to make sure it's done properly and make sure that it does actually change me into who God wants me to be. Because I think that's important. I think that's, it's obviously more important than being accepted by people around you. It's being accepted by God. So, but yeah, it was after that I started looking into like what God wanted me to do and where I could go. And one of the things I wanted to do because of these Americans coming over, they always come over on for the spring break mission from Moody Bible Institute. They'd come over to the church for 2 weeks and basically take over what we did as a church and help out with all the different activities that went on. So there'll be some that did the Sunday school, some of them that did the preaching, and some of them would lead the worship and things like that. So they would come over every year for the spring break and help us out. So I thought, well, I want to go to America. I want to, want to basically become an American, because I thought they were really cool people that they were confident and could say anything, and they only seemed like really nice people. But it wasn't just that. Was again just my perspective of them. It wasn't the fact that they were American that made them cool. It was the fact that they were spiritual Christians that stood out to me more. But I didn't realise at the time that that's what it was. It was more of God was leading me a certain way, and I think he used that to get me on to the next step, because I started looking into like, well, how can I go to America? How could I go and move there? Because throughout my life, I just felt like I didn't fit in, and I thought, well, maybe it's because of the fact I'm English and I'm meant to be an American. It's, you're a teenager and you just think all kinds of strange things, and maybe on this thing, maybe on that, and you end up basing your life on what you think than what you actually know. But it led me towards like saying like, well, if I can go to America, then saying to God, if I can go to America, I'll do anything you want, which is a dangerous thing to say, because you're like, well, okay, maybe I want you to go to Iraq and fight in the war there. Maybe I want you to go and preach the gospel to cannibals or whatever. Could have been anything. But I prayed that, and then I looked into like going to Moody Bible Institute and thought about like what different courses there were, and I looked at becoming a youth pastor. But then when I was 17, I started. My brother showed me like this music video of like the Can Can by Vanessa Mae, but it was done. It was like an anime music video, so there's like anime in the background as like the video, and then they put Vanessa Mae Can Can for the music. And my brother wasn't, showing me the video for the video. He was showing it to me for the music and saying, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, the music's cool," but then I was just like, what's the anime, or what's the cartoon in the background? And then I looked it up, and it was Lucky Star. So I looked at the trailer for Lucky Star on my desk, and just thought, "Oh, this is amazing! I've got to watch this." And I saw the trailer that was dubbed in English and thought, right, I'll go and watch this. And then I went on to Pirate Bay and downloaded all the episodes. And then when I watched it, I watched it on my PSP, and then realised that it was in Japanese and it was subtitled. And I was like, oh. And then there's something about Japanese that sort of stood out to me, and it was just like, it didn't sound like Chinese or Korean or any other Asian language or any other language that I've ever heard before. It just sort of spoke to me in a way, and it was interesting. So I thought, well, maybe I should learn Japanese, and my sort of, that wasn't the first time I'd even heard or seen Japanese. It was just like one of these things that kept coming up in my life, because I'll go back and tell you about that in a minute. But it was like coming up in like computer games. My dad had some tools that were made in Japan, and then my dad also bought Toyota Lucida, which is a Japanese import, and that had Japanese writing all over the seats and everything, so like all the instructions. And then anime was like this final thing that I started watching, got me into Japanese, so that was that. So I started learning Japanese online when I was 17, and then like the more I studied about it, the more I sort of thought, well, my personality really sort of fits in Japan, so I was just like, maybe I want to go to Japan. But I didn't really think much of it. I just sort of thought, well, I'll learn Japanese, and then that'll be cool, I suppose. I can, do that, and then I'll go to America. So eventually, the woman who ran the trip for the Moody students to come to our church decided that she wanted the youth group to go over and visit them on the campus. So when I was, I think it was, my 19th birthday, I managed to actually go over and spend 10 days in Chicago, and got to see Moody Bible Institute there, and thought, this was amazing and good and everything, and that was it. That was my trip to America. So I actually got to go to America. So then it was just like, well, now God gets to say what He wants to do. So it's like going back to how I got into Japanese. That sort of goes back to when I was 4 again, and I can't remember if it was like, I can't remember if I went to my cousin's first, because my cousin had a NES, and he had like Super Mario Bros. So at his house, that would have been the first game I played. I don't know if I went there first and then came home and asked if we had any computer games, or if my dad showed me the Commodore, which I'm about to show you. I think what happened was, it was just a random day. I was 4 years old, we were at home, and my dad decided to bring the Commodore out the loft, which is this thing. This is the same one that we had. And then the other thing was, there's the data set. So all the games ran on cassette tape. And then the first game we ever played was, I'm going to come up to the camera and show you, was Mad Nurse. I think that's the first game I ever played. It might have been the second game I ever played, but it was certainly one of the first. Depending on what order things happened, but you know, I was 4 years old at the time, so I don't fully remember what order everything was. Yeah, so that's the second copy that I bought because in case the tape decides it doesn't want to work anymore, that's a backup. So yeah, after, and I'm going to be playing that in a little bit, but I'll edit the video, so you probably won't even know. This is going to be all over the place, so never mind. Yeah, and then this was the controller for it, and then you can hear the clicks. So that's that. And yeah, this was for a while. This was the first thing I had for computer games, but at my cousin's house he had a NES or an NES. So that's one of these, and I don't have the controller anywhere around on me, but you know, there's that. And then this is a copy of Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt, so yeah. But he had just a single cartridge of Super Mario Bros. as well. So yeah, it was either that I went round there and then came home and asked, do I have any computer games? Or my dad showed me the Commodore. And then I went round to my cousin's house and said, do you have any computer games? And that's basically how I got into gaming. After we had played on that for a little while, my now brother-in-law, but my future brother-in-law at the time, gave me his NES. This isn't the same one, unfortunately, but gave me his NES, and then one of the games we had was 3-in-1, which was Super Mario Bros., Nintendo World Cup, and Tetris. And the thing with Nintendo World Cup was that it had all these different countries, and they had like caricatures for each country, and one of the ones on there was Japan, and I thought they looked funny, which was not a racist thing at the time because I didn't know. It was just, you know, the way that they're drawn on the thing, the caricatures looked interesting and funny to me, so I always liked to play as Japan because they were the most interesting looking characters in the game. So that was like the first interesting. And as I say, well, Nintendo are from Japan. I don't know if this actually says made in Japan or not. But it was like one of those things I noticed, like, as I got older, that it does say made in Japan. Hold on, I'll bring that to the camera. Probably blocked all the light off as well. Anyway. Yeah, basically, the point is that all these consoles that I had, the Nintendo, the Mega Drive, they were made in Japan, and all the games, and I just thought, what an interesting place that these games all came from. For some reason I overlooked the fact that most of the games that I had on the Commodore were made in England, or possibly America, because the Commodore was American. But and that sort of ties the two things again, America and Japan as well. So there we are. Throughout the years, Japan has been this country that's sort of come up in my life and stood out to me. So I've always had an appreciation for Japanese things, even without realising it, because cartoons like the Moomins, I still love the Moomins, Pokemon, and all these other cartoons that came from Japan that I used to watch growing up, and didn't even realise that the Moomins was anime. And although the Moomins is finished, it's like the animation was done in Japan, so and Pokemon as well was Japanese. And then of course I saw this, I had saw my dad's tools were made in Japan, and I saw the Lucida, which had all the Japanese writing all over it, and then finally found this anime, Lucky Star, and downloaded it, and it was all in Japanese with English subtitles. So I just thought, well, maybe I'll learn Japanese. So I'd already started learning Japanese before I went to Chicago, and it was just like once I got back from there, I sort of started feeling more and more drawn towards Japan, and thought, well, there must be something that God wants me to do. So I was looking at different things, like conferences I could go to, and well, first of all, I applied for a mission trip with OMF, and they said that I needed to have a job first. I was like thinking, well, if I don't have a job, then I can go over and spend a year there and do a mission trip there, so I won't have to be quitting a job and untying myself from something I'll have no ties. I'll be able to just go over. And they said, no, you need to be, you're not independent enough, you need to have a job first, have some life experience, have something. So I was just like really confused, and then they said, well, if you look on our website, there are other things available for you to look at. And so I looked at the website and found there was a conference that I could go to called Next Gen, and I went, and met like loads of different Christians there that were all interested in people who wanted to go to China, who wanted to go to Japan, Singapore, Korea, like North Korea, which, you know, blows my mind a little bit. People wanted to go there, but, you know, that's where God called them, so that's where they went. So I was like learning about, you know, different missions and things, and people going to different places, and, you know, that was another one of those experiences where God really spoke to me and really touched me, because he was like, you know, he gave me the vision to plant a church and to have like a Bible college, and that's like way off in the future, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how far in the future, but like, it's obviously not for me right now, but you know, each day's getting closer to that, I suppose. But, you know, he gave me the vision to go to Japan. He was like, no, I didn't want you to go to America. I was just sort of, you know, I was guiding you down this path, and I used that to, you know, to steer you in the right direction, because you didn't know where to go, you didn't know where you fit in, so I showed you. So that's basically how I see it. That I used my feeling that I didn't fit in and chasing after America to just get me to the point of like, well, I was desperate enough to pray that, you know, as long as I get to go to America, I'll do whatever you want. So it was like that. And then yeah, so that's basically a very long story of how I became a Christian and how I got into computer games. So I think that's as much as I need to say right now. I'll go and boot up Madness now, so you can see what it's like. Although I probably would have already done that by now. And this whole video might not even be on videos. I'll edit this at some point.